Hey guys, Matt here with RCRV. We are a group of part-time RVers with full-time jobs showing you just how much fun you can have even if you're part-time. If this is your first time to the channel, we want to say welcome and we would love to get to know you. So if you could please leave a comment below, even if it's just say hi and tell us where you're from. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to back up an RV at night. Now, some of these tips we cover will be very good for just in general backing up an RV into a campsite. Some of them are going to be very specific to backing up at night. Now, we are at Fort Yargo State Park in Georgia, and we were going to do a campground review because this is actually one of our favorite campgrounds. But as you can see, the weather didn't really cooperate this weekend. It's very rainy all weekend, so we didn't get any footage. Now, we will definitely get back here, so we'll be able to get a campground review in another video. Now, this video is not going to be a step-by-step how to back up an RV. Now, we may make a video like that in the future. This is more going to be tips and tricks of how to make it less stressful and some things you should look for to make it a little bit easier on yourself. This is by no means all-encompassing. These are just some simple tips that we use when we're backing up the rig, especially at night. So the first tip is get out and look. So when pulling up at night, the first thing we do is we'll stop in front of the site and get out of the truck and go evaluate the site that you're pulling into. You want to walk the pad that you're about to back in on. You want to check and see if there's any weird angles you need to back into. You want to look for tree branches, any of them that are low that may hit your rig. You also want to check the opposite side of the street that you're backing in from because you want to make sure that the nose of your truck has enough clearance to swing as you're making the turn backing into your campsite. Sometimes there are trees or poles in the way, and it's something you want to make sure that you are aware of before starting your turn. So something I like to do when backing in at night is I will turn my headlights off. Typically in most vehicles, if you turn your headlights off one click, it shuts the front beams off, but still leaves your running lights on. So my fog lights will be on and my running lights are on the truck, which is plenty of light to be able to back in, but my headlights aren't blaring out into the campsite in front of me. It's not a rule, I just like to respect other people's campsites that got there earlier than I did. Now if I ever need to pull forward or I need to see in front of me, I will turn the headlights back on to pull forward, but generally speaking, as I'm backing up, I don't have my headlights on. So the next tip is to use a spotter, specifically a spotter with a flashlight. A lot of RVs don't have reverse lights. So for instance, our rig, when we put it in reverse, there are no white lights that shine behind the rig, so you really can't see anything. You can't see your tires, you can't see the corner of the rig. So a spotter with a flashlight will be your saving grace. So tip number 4 is to go slower than normal. Remember, you can only see one side of your rig at a time, and that's whatever side that the spotter is on. And that kind of segues into the next tip, which is if you can't see the spotter, stop. The spotter has the flashlight, let them check your blind side and then come back and let you know. Don't just try to do it without light because they may be checking something that you don't know. And they can only check one side of the RV at a time. Now talking about the spotter leads us into our next tip, which is what is the best position for the spotter to be in with the flashlight? This is where I see a lot of people in the campgrounds, in my opinion, doing it the wrong way. Now, most of the times, what you'll see is someone standing towards the back of the RV, shining the flashlight forward. This is a natural position. You're trying to see what's behind the RV and watch as it backs in. The problem with this is that as a driver, looking back in your mirrors, this is all you see. Just a bright light that's blinding your entire view. What we found is a better solution is to stand towards the nose of the RV and shine the flashlight back towards the end of the RV. Now the best thing to do is to point the flashlight in between the wheels of the camper and the very tail end of the camper. Because when you're backing up, this is what we use to align the RV with the campsite. Now there's one caveat to this, and that is understanding angles of the mirror. If you stand directly next to your RV and shine the flashlight back towards the end, you'll actually be standing directly in the sight line of the driver in the truck. What I recommend is taking a few steps out away from the RV and still shining the light back towards the end of it. This will give the driver a perfect sight line in their rear view mirror and still be able to have the light where they need it, which is on the tires and the back of the RV, on top of still being able to see everything in the back. Now, if you have a backup camera, this will also help because it will help illuminate the back of the camper as you're backing up and keep the spotter out of your sight line. So the next tip is If you are a spotter, know what the driver uses to line up the camper. This will help you know where to shine the light and how to help give direction. For us, I use the wheels of the camper and the very back corner of the camper to line up to the site. I also use the very edge of the pad. So when you're backing into a campsite pad, there are typically edges of concrete, or sometimes they have wood partitions there. I will use that line to line up both the wheels, which helps give me my turning angles, and the rear of the camper. Now in your rear view mirrors, you can see straight down the side of the camper, so you can see whether your camper is lined up straight or if it's a little crooked. You can also get a gauge of how close you are to your connections to see if you have enough room for your slide outs. Now the next tip is all about communication. So we highly recommend using some form of device to be able to communicate from the spotter to the driver. Now we use cell phones sometimes when backing in. We also have walkie-talkies that we use in case we're in a campground that doesn't have a cell phone signal. But some form of device, instead of just leaning out the window and screaming back to the other person, is definitely recommended and make your life a lot easier. Now a couple points on communication. As a spotter, understand that less is more. There is nothing wrong with silence. The driver has 1,000 things going through his head. He's watching where the wheels are, he's worried about his blind side, he's got to remember to look at the nose of the truck as he's swinging out to make sure he doesn't hit something. He's listening in case he hears that dreaded stop. So he's got a lot of things going through his head. Silence is fine. When I'm backing up and Pao is silent, I know that I'm good. For example, as I'm backing up and I ask Pao, hey, am I straight? Her response is going to be, yes, you're good, or no, you need to go a little bit to the passenger side or driver's side. And that's it.
You're good.
Trying to watch this guy's car on my driver's side.
Oh.
A lot of times the spotter really wants to just over-communicate because they try to give you the most information. And that conversation when we first started was more like, yes, you're good, but you could go a little bit to the right, but there's a couple rocks there, and I'm not sure that this tree is going to be in the way of the awning when we get set up. And it's just overload in your brain. You can't handle it. They don't understand that you're thinking about 1,000 other things. And especially if it's one of us guys backing up, we can typically only focus on one thing at a time, and it's just information overload for us. The only time silence is actually bad is when you say stop, and then you're silent. As a spotter, if you tell the driver to stop, they're going to stop. But then if you don't tell them what's wrong, we naturally think the worst. I've hit a tree. So if you're going to tell the driver to stop, give them a short reason what's going on. Stop. Let me go check the blind side real quick. And then come back and tell them it's fine. Or, hold on 1 second, stop. Let me check this limb. I'll be right back. That way we know we can stay calm and just wait on you. Now the last thing I want to say on communication is probably one of the most important aspects is don't use the words left and right. As a driver, everything is reversed. You have to turn the steering wheel the opposite direction to get the camper to go the direction you want. Your truck is swinging the opposite direction. Sometimes you're looking backwards as the rig's backing up. So your left and right will be opposite looking backwards than it will be looking forwards. Also, if you want the camper to go left, you have to turn the steering wheel right. So there's a lot of stuff going on in your brain. So when you say you need to go to the right, as a driver, it's going to take me about 10 seconds to try to figure out which right that you mean. The best solution that we've come up with is to use driver side or passenger side. No matter which way you're facing, you know what the driver side or the passenger side is. We have found that this is the easiest form of communicating which direction we should put the RV in. So the next tip is specifically for the spotters. If you're being a spotter, our suggestion is don't worry about the fine tuning of where your RV placement is on the site or the pad. The biggest stress of the driver when backing up an RV at night is just getting the rig into the site safely without hitting anything. Once you're in the site, your stress levels go down. It's very easy once you're in the site to be able to pull forward and just scoot the RV over a few inches. It's a lot less stressful than having to do it in one shot. All right, so the last tip is make sure to praise the driver. Regardless of what kind of job they did, Unless they hit a tree, in which case, all bets are off. Praise the driver when he gets in the site, no matter how stressful the backing up experience was, especially if it's a guy. Everybody knows guys are pretty much big kids. We need praise. Now, if your wife happens to be backing in the RV, I know Paul has backed in the RV a couple times, this tip is even more important for you fellas, because if you don't praise your wife after she's backed in the RV, she'll never try it again. No matter who's driving, immediately after getting your RV into the site is not the time to criticize or help them become better. What we found is praise the person who was driving. You did a great job, babe. Get your RV set up, crack open a drink, and then you can have a discussion about ways to maybe improve your backing up. So those are our tips for backing up an RV at night. These are things that we found helpful after doing a lot of things the hard way. Hopefully these tips help you set up your campsite at night stress-free and be able to just enjoy a nice fire pit and a drink instead of writing up divorce papers. If you guys found any of this information useful, we'd love it if you could give us one of these and consider subscribing to our channel. We would love to have you join our community. Thanks for watching.